As a real estate agent in your marketplace, you want to be known as the economist of choice. Today on this program, we have Jordan Bean. He's a chief strategy officer for Next Day Dumpsters. He's a master of data. He understands the influxes in and out of states and why people are moving. We're going to jump right into that. Welcome, Jordan.
Joe, thanks for having me on.
That's fantastic. We've had conversations before, and your research is super interesting to me. I'm somewhat of a geek in that area as far as enjoying it. I couldn't do the research you're doing. So let's jump into, we're in the Southeast market. Primarily, that's where you're studying. What are some of the trends going on the East Coast?
So a lot of what we're seeing, Joe, is people settling more into the middle of the Southeast. And so at the beginning of COVID, there was obviously a lot of movement from the Northeast, coming from primarily Massachusetts and New York, all the way down to Florida. And now what we're seeing is people settle a little bit more in the middle. So places like Raleigh, Durham, Charlotte, Nashville, as well as Atlanta, places that have a really strong local economy to support jobs, to support white collar professions, are seeing a lot more of this movement around the Southeast. Places that benefited from a lot of that, COVID lifestyle bump, call it a beach town or somewhere that maybe was great to work for a year or two, but doesn't have the local economy and the local jobs to back up people that have been moving there, are seeing a lot of that growth slow over the last year or two.
Okay, so it's probably a little too soon right now. During the COVID period, when everybody was migrating to those more remote areas, I was on Cape Cod where they benefited greatly from that. Yeah. And now, is it too soon to start seeing any data on what is happening with those areas?
I wouldn't say it's too soon. I'd say we're already starting to see it come through in 2023. So first off, nationwide, we're seeing a little bit of a slowdown in migration. So less people that are moving between areas. A lot of that kind of 2020 to 21, 22, I think pulled forward a lot of migration that might not have happened. The first things first is there was a lot of activity that was driven by COVID, was pulled forward by COVID. But what we're seeing now, if we expand maybe out of the Southeast a little bit, is you look at towns like Boise, Idaho, out west. They were the fastest growing town from 2019 to 21. They're the 20th fastest growing from 21 to 23. So a lot of these places that people move for outdoors, for mountains, for beaches. Jacksonville is another one that shot really high on the list early on and that has moved down since then. So what we're seeing is a lot of these places that, again, just don't have the local economy. They can support a remote worker, but once that remote worker gets called back to the office or looks to change jobs and can't find something remote, are seeing more resiliency in places, again, like Raleigh, like Charlotte, like Nashville or Atlanta, where they do have a lot more local jobs to support them.
And what are we seeing with pricing, where the moving in the Northeast, what's their lifestyle structure or the pricing, their affordability up there compared to when they're moving down into the Southeast?
Yeah, so I am one of the people that came from the Northeast, came down to Raleigh, so I can speak to it really personally, as well as what we're seeing on a broader scale. Is when you look at a place like, I'm going to stick with Raleigh or Charlotte because I know these really well. The business operates there, and I'm obviously local to here. We find that the affordability is changing for people that live here, but still very competitive compared to the people that are moving from the Northeast or from other large metros. So while we may feel that prices have gone up a lot, it's still about, half the price or so of what you might find in Boston compared to a standard of living. What we also find is that the people that are moving into Wake and Durham counties from these large cities predominantly bring a higher income than people that are already here. So people moving from Middlesex County, which is a suburb of Boston, Suffolk County, even from Illinois, Chicago brings a very high income into the triangle. So what we're seeing is a lot of the people moving from these larger cities are bringing a much higher income with them than what a typical household would already earn here. So affordability, it looks a little bit different to them, and that's probably why we're seeing these prices continue to rise.
What trends kick in as the prices continue to rise? What do you see happen to the economy in general? Commute times, things of that nature. Is there anything that you have on that?
Yeah, so there's a couple of different things at play. One is you see the nature of what's built changing. So here in the Raleigh market, there's less single families that are being built unless you go into some areas that have a very high price tag on them, because the cost of the land to support that house is just different than it would have been maybe 5 or 10 years ago. A lot more of that infill development, a lot more of those 6, 8, 12 townhomes going on to 2 or 3 lots that are put together. So we see in these areas that are fast growing, again, like a Nashville, like a Raleigh, the way that houses are built in order to meet an affordability that maybe is a little bit different than it was before is different. And then being able to keep up with the local infrastructure is something that's really important. So when you look at something like, again, a Cary or a Raleigh, they benefit from about 25 to 30% of workers are remote in those areas. And so you save a little bit of congestion on the roads compared to somewhere that has a little bit of a higher number in office. So if anything, we benefit a little bit from, there are remote workers that are coming here, but also they're not completely clogging up the roads. Anyone that commutes day in, day out, I'm sure will tell me a little bit different, but by and large, I think it's better than it could be based on who's moving here.
Now, do you see a difference in the two markets you mentioned, Charlotte versus Raleigh? Same state, one's a little further west and south than the other. You see migration from different areas?
Yeah, even though it's not much of a geographic difference, you do actually see a different type of household coming into those different areas. So one place that we look at is IRS tax migration data. So they will publish based on where someone was in year 1 and year 2, what county were they moving from, how much income shifted from one county to another. So we're able to get really specific in where people are coming from and what types of household income are behind them. And so when you look at somewhere like Charlotte, they're predominantly pulling from places like an Atlanta, who's pretty close to them, as well as over the border into South Carolina, even up from Charleston. So kind of everything south and a little bit west is what's moving into Charlotte. Whereas when you start to look toward the east and north, that's where households are starting to move into more of Raleigh, Wake County, Durham. So places like Boston, New York, as well as greater DC. DC itself and some of the Virginia suburbs tend to send a lot more people into Raleigh. So even though we see it as only about 2.5 hours drive apart, it actually is attracting a different household from a different part of the country based on it.
That's fascinating. And now you're constantly studying this. How do you apply this to your business? And I'm trying to get the correlation to how a real estate agent might be able to do it the same.
Sure. So I'll give 30 seconds on what my business is, then I'll answer that question just to set the tone. But we do roll-off dumpster rental. So we work with households that are moving, households that are doing major construction projects, anyone that's, say, adding an ADU or doing major work on their home. Our primary customer is that homeowner, small to mid-sized contractor. So we keep a really close tab on what is the health of the consumer, where are people moving to and from. Our business is oftentimes driven by things like interest rates, housing prices, house price appreciation. So everything that a realtor looks at is something that we're looking at in our business as well. And so a couple of the ways that we use it is as we map out our expansion plans, where we want to grow next, we really want to understand where are the sustainable places that people are moving. So not that COVID blip or that one-time movement, but if we're going to invest equipment, trucks, resources, or make an acquisition, we want to make sure that we're doing it in an area that has sustained growth, has strong fundamentals. So we pull it all into that. And then also to understand the health of our business. So if we are up or down in business, does that correlate to what's happening in the housing market, in the local population with migration trends? So again, things like interest rates, as it becomes more expensive to do a home improvement, to do a new bath, we see some of that come through from the consumer. So we keep very close tabs on what's happening in our local economies, as well as that broader view of migration to know that the places that we want to be, the places that we're investing for growth are places that we see a really strong fundamental in place.
So when you're looking at a market area that you're going into, how far out from the center of how big is your circle?
We typically look at a metro area. So depending on where that is, it's going to be a little bit different. A place like Atlanta is going to have a bit of a larger metro. Somewhere like Raleigh is actually split between Raleigh-Cary and then Durham-Chapel Hill. So we have a little bit of a kind of difference depending on the market. But by and large, I want to say we cover about 30 to 40 miles from downtown Raleigh, in most directions. So our service area is broad enough to cover most of the activity that's going on within that region.
So that's interesting. You look at Durham and Chapel Hill and Cary and Raleigh as two separate markets?
Yeah, so statistically, they are separated by the Census Bureau into two separate metro areas. We service both of them, but it does create a bit of a larger service area. So for example, we cover more ground in Raleigh than we do in Charlotte, because trying to get the whole triangle is just a larger area than it is out west in Charlotte.
Do you see the big differences in the statistics and the data from from Chapel Hill, Durham to Cary, Raleigh, as far as the makeup of the economy and the people in there?
Yeah, so Raleigh-Cary is actually much more populous than Durham-Chapel Hill. So we might think of them about evenly, or Durham is sometimes talked about with Raleigh, but there's about 1.4 million people in the Raleigh-Cary metro versus about 650,000 in Durham-Chapel Hill. So just the sheer size of the metro itself means that Raleigh-Cary attracts more business activity as well as more investment into those places. And then also when you look at household income, Raleigh-Cary tends to be a little bit higher income than Durham does. And so again, you think about the composition of the households, what they're looking for, what types of services they want. You'll find that Raleigh-Cary tends to be, a little bit more dense, a little bit more of that active environment versus Durham, Chapel Hill. Obviously, you have the universities out there. Downtown Durham is really exploding in popularity, but by and large, a lot more of that activity is flowing through to Raleigh-Cary.
And as far as the type of people that are moving into the Raleigh area versus Charlotte, is there a distinction between who they are, not just from where they came?
So typically you'd find that someone in Charlotte might be a little bit on the younger side, a little bit more likely to want more of a city environment, I would call it. If you think about downtown Charlotte, if anyone has been there, it obviously is a lot more dense, a lot more high rises. The interesting thing about Raleigh-Cary is you actually span all generations coming through this area. So you will have a lot of people that come here for college and never leave. You'll have a lot of young professionals that come in and start to raise a family. And then also, say, parents that want to support a child that has come or that has children and wants to babysit for them. So Raleigh-Cary tends to be a lot more spread out along the type of person that is moving here versus Charlotte tends to be a little bit more concentrated, more of that young. They don't have the university environment that Raleigh-Cary does, and they don't have kind of the lifestyle maybe that would span multiple generations. So you get a little bit more concentrated of who's moving there.
That's very interesting. So what about the people who are leaving these areas? Do you have any information on who's migrating out or emigrating?
Yeah, there could be a couple of reasons behind it, but I think one of the interesting findings specifically related to kind of the Raleigh-Durham area, so group those two together for the sake of this discussion, is that you find that the type of person that's leaving tends to be lower income than the one that's coming in. So not necessarily low income, but just that the people coming in are bringing a higher income to the people that are leaving. So whether the prices are driving them out, whether they can't find the home that they want, whether another factor is at play, that's not information that kind of I'm ready and able to dive into yet. But what I do know is that a lot of this, again, housing price appreciation, a lot of what's driving the strength of this market is that the people that are leaving are being replaced with incomes that are anywhere from, call it 10 to 20, as much as 25% higher, depending on the metro that it's pulling from compared to the one already here.
And can you tell if, anecdotally, I could tell you that a lot of that's happening and they're moving out further, just outside of the county, not necessarily out of the state. Do you have any data on where they're going?
Yeah, so there's a lot of in-state migration. That's going to happen with kind of any large metro areas. You're going to shift between different places. So you certainly see that. But then when you turn it around to kind of where they're going, you do see some activity into large hubs like in New York City. This tends to be a popular one. But again, as a percentage of the total population, New York is a big area. So you're going to see more people going to there regardless, simply because of its population size. But what we do find is that more people are coming into the Raleigh-Durham area than are leaving to those areas. So on a net basis, we still do tend to be attracting more people than we do sending them away.
Any opportunity to forecast what happens, or is that?
No crystal ball. I won't sit here and tell you that I know the perfect answer, but I can tell you what I think based on a lot of the information that I'm seeing, that we're tracking. And again, I continue to believe that when we look at a lot of the large metro areas, so I'm talking, again, nationwide, places like New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, San Francisco, they continue to see a downward trend in population. So that is not something that started before COVID. It accelerated in COVID, and we continue to see it now. So there's more opportunity for cities outside of those traditional hubs to step up. And we're seeing a lot of that come through, where places that are maybe a mid-sized to larger metro, 750,000 to 1.5 million or so, we're right on the cusp of that in Raleigh-Cary, and other metros along the Southeast see it. They're starting to gain more population coming from these larger cities that are bringing talent, they're bringing workforce, they're bringing income. And so what I do see is there's probably a little bit more room for these large metros to decline until the prices come back into a stratosphere that someone can afford. As jobs come back more in person, we don't know what the timeline on that looks like. We've heard a lot of bluster. We've heard a lot of companies like Amazon that are bringing people back. But I think until that happens in force, people will continue to choose where to live, and that it tends to be a little bit outside of an urban area, but close enough that they can get back if they want. So again, I think that a big advantage of being here in somewhere like Raleigh is your very short flight to DC, your very short flight to New York City. You can get right up to Boston. So we're finding companies, how far away as Apple and Google, that are setting up shop here, but also you're seeing other companies where employees have chosen to move down here that might set up a satellite office or might allow someone to work from here. So my crystal ball would be, people are going to settle in areas that they can find a job locally, they can access jobs if they're a hybrid or primarily remote worker, but they're not going to stray too far from those city environments, because that is still where the economic opportunity lies.
Are there other areas outside of Charlotte and the Raleigh area that you see a migration where it's a mid-sized city and it's starting to grow?
Yeah, so an obvious one is a place like Austin, Texas, which has had a lot of buzz around the population moving there. And I'd say while they're still popular, they are declining in popularity. So they hit their growth phase, peaked out maybe call it 5-6 years ago, where now if you look at the home prices there, you look at the population size, they're starting to slow their growth a little bit. Places that are sustaining momentum or places like Nashville is a big one. Orlando, inland in Florida, I think you're going to see some of the people that maybe went down to the coast and now are experiencing some of the events that are happening down there might be moving a little bit further inland. So I'd say what you're seeing is places like Nashville is sustaining its momentum. The Carolinas is very strong. Charleston is actually hanging on surprisingly well. They do have a bit of industry there, but then also working our way down a little bit further south. Places inland like a Lakeland, Florida, as well as in Orlando, tend to be benefiting recently too.
I get that. No, being in front of the path of a hurricane is not a fun place to be.
No, and I think you're going to find that a lot of people, if you look at the housing market there and the number of houses that are going up for sale, it looks like there's some type of correction in sight, because I think a lot of us went down there for the remote work, are just living a little bit of a different reality right now. And what you're seeing is people that aren't native to there, that don't have a tie there, choosing to maybe uproot. And again, that's why I think a crystal ball says they're probably going to settle somewhere between where they started, where they went. They're probably going to come somewhere back in the middle that still offers them some of those lifestyle benefits, some of those weather benefits, but maybe doesn't quite have the same risks associated with the coast right now.
Now, those people are locally known as halfbacks. They go all the way to Florida and then they come halfway back.
Yeah, but you're also seeing places like a Wilmington or a Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, that tend to be holding their population pretty well. Some of that might be coming from people that pulled forward their retirement. So someone that might have been planning to retire at 65, housing prices went up, stock market went up, remote work ran out at their job, and they said, I can either go back into the workforce or I can maybe retire a little bit early. And so I think some of those communities are benefiting as well from, someone that maybe pulled forward retirement a couple of years, wants to be on the beach, and you're seeing, again, Wilmington and Myrtle Beach really seeing strong population growth.
What other areas do you see that are on? These things ebb and flow, right? There's right now, whether it's cities growing, the metro area is growing or it's shrinking, it's always doing this, correct? Pretty much.
People are always going from somewhere to somewhere. So we saw some trends accelerate or change, but at the end of the day, there's long-term averages that tend to fluctuate and balance out over time.
Yeah, right. So with your growth, if you can disclose this, where do you see the next best area for you guys to grow into?
Yeah, so we personally like the Southeast. So right now we cover most of Maryland, DC, Northern Virginia, Raleigh, and Charlotte. So we're looking down the Southeast, and we've done a pretty comprehensive analysis across the markets that sit down there. So I think you'd either see us keep going south into a place like Atlanta, very large, very well known, well established, and has a lot of the characteristics that we like for our company. We could also go maybe out west toward Nashville, and then up towards, say, a Cincinnati. That might take us up into the Midwest. You see, again, a lot of activity happening there, a little bit higher incomes. Household density is something that we look for too. We rely a lot on branding. And so having really dense populations in a small area is good for us. So I think any of those paths are things that we have looked at, and depending on kind of what's out there for us might be something that we go do.
That's really smart thinking, which I expected. So agents don't have a lot of time to dig into all this. Where can they find this information? Is it easy?
There are varying degrees of easy behind the information. Some of them can be accessed at a surface level pretty easily. So there's a website called censusreporter.org. It gives very good and clean, easy to access statistics on metro areas, counties, cities. I'd absolutely recommend, just for a high level overview of what this looks like, a place like that, something that I use when I just want to reference, a quick statistic. When it comes down to some of the more intricate details of population growth and IRS tax migration data, it just takes a little bit of Excel work. So I can't sit here and tell you that, it's as easy as putting something into a URL bar, but with tools like ChatGPT or others that help with analysis, it is becoming a lot easier to work with these data files. So I'd say don't be scared off by it, but if you just want a brief overview, understand the population, understand, what that population is comprised of, by age, by income, by other variables. Censusreporter.org is a great place to start.
That's awesome. That's great. Jordan, what else? Overwhelmed with the data that you've given us so far. What else might be of importance that anybody that's developing a business in these areas should understand?
Yeah, I'd say that not all metros, within a metro, I should say, they're not all created equally. And so there is a lot of dispersion among what you might see within that metro area. So again, we say, are you going to North Raleigh? Are you going out to East Raleigh? You're going south, west, Durham, Chapel Hill. It all looks very different. So for a business like ours, what we've done is actually gone in and mapped each of our metro areas that we operate in and said, this is an area that we really like. This is where we want to invest resources. This is where we want to market more aggressively. And then other areas where we say, hey, we'll service it, but it's just not something that we're going to spend quite as much time trying to grow our business in. So when you think about, a realtor, when you think about your audience, one thing is, what type of customer are you trying to connect with? Because that will vary, within those metro areas of what you want to go for. So if you're more on the luxury end of the market, if you're more on the condo end of the market, whatever that might look like, just understanding that, there is inflows and outflows from all of these areas. We can track that. And that really helps us understand, where are people going? Where are they coming from? Where do you build a referral network? Where should you be connecting into? But also, once you actually get to the step of execution, understanding within those areas, where should you be focusing time and effort? That's all going to depend on, what it is you're trying to accomplish, who it is that you're trying to work with. And that's going to look very different within those metros.
Oh, great advice. Thank you. So now for a non-data, non-real estate question. We both moved down here. I'm trying to recruit some friends. Tell me why'd you get here, and to explain the differences and what you like about it.
Well, 79 degrees on October 22nd doesn't hurt, but I was one of the many people in COVID, my wife and I both, that happened to have a remote job, that happened to have some flexibility in where we went. And we said, hey, where are some great places to live? Where's getting some buzz? And Raleigh was one of them. So we figured, why not try it out? We had nothing to lose. We could always move back up north if that was something that we chose to do. And so we did take that flexibility, just like I talked about with many others, to look for a place that was accessible to the Northeast, where we have family, was still a good job market or a good place that had activity going on, but also that was somewhere new and different than where we come from before. So what I love about here is the outdoor lifestyle, the number of greenways and parks and places that you can be outside, as well as how much of the year you can be outside is very different. How green it is here. Again, if you come from the Northeast between November and April, you're going to look at bare trees, probably some dirty snow on the ground. We haven't had snow in 2 years here. On the flip side, what I miss is I do love a city environment. And I think that's something that's lacking around this area is the downtown is not very vibrant. North Hills is great, but it's just a small contained area. Same thing with downtown Durham is, you can spend a bit of time there. So I do think that's what we're lacking is that real vibrancy. And I'd say that's why, a lot of the younger people tend to be moving maybe more towards Charlotte, because you do get more of that city environment, the walkability. You can do everything in a very tight and contained space. We're a very driving metro here, and that's just very different when you come from, say, a Boston, where we did.
Yeah, definitely. I concur on all of that. What I do see is easy access to some of the smaller towns on the outskirts of the city, like Wake Forest, like Apex. Carries a little bit bigger than both of those, more of a city. And like Apex, and we're seeing Wendell and all these other small towns, really Franklinton. We were up there a couple weeks ago. And these little small towns really have a really cool feel with them. They have a lot to offer in their downtown. They have that they're maintaining their character, not just whitewashing everything and taking it down and rebuilding. And coming from Boston, in those areas, to have that type of look and feel and the infrastructure around it, room for infrastructure to be built around it, to get easy access and to get around is something that is very different from New England, where things are built on cow paths and it's been around since the 1600s. So
yeah, I won't take you too far back into the data, but we do see a lot of migration outward from those city centers, and those exurbs that used to be way out are now a 35 minute drive out, say, from downtown Raleigh, is somewhere that people want, because when you have a scarcity of land, that drives up land prices. What's the next thing people do is they start to look a little further out. When you look at somewhere like Raleigh, it went from Raleigh to Cary to Apex. And we're continuing that outward migration, and people are expanding a little further where they're willing to go to get land, to get a single family home, because maybe they're only going in 2 or 3 days a week. So that 45 minute drive just doesn't hurt quite as much as a 5 day a week.
Yeah, and that's bringing up a lot of good real estate opportunities for investment too, which
Yeah.
hasn't existed in the northeast of New England in a long time.
Yeah, and I'm from New Hampshire, and so you see a lot of people pushing over the border into New Hampshire, both for tax purposes as well as, again, that commute into Boston when you don't have to do it 5 days a week. It doesn't hurt as much. So a lot of communities are feeling that impact of a widening radius of where people will go based on the job they have.
Fantastic, Jordan. Great information. You probably got a lot of people scratching their heads and thinking about how they're going to be able to use this data and to start thinking about maybe more wisely how they're spending the money on their marketing and where to look for their incoming people. So I really appreciate this. Any closing remarks?
No, there's never been more information out there. It's what we do with it. It's how we use it. The tools are getting better and simpler to use. So don't be scared off. It's out there. There's a way to work with it, and it does really help in how you target and how you spend your time.
And if somebody wanted to get in touch with you, what's the best way? Is LinkedIn, or just to get some ideas maybe on how to use this data?
LinkedIn is a great way to get in touch with me. Easy, and just connect on there, and a nice simple message.
Good, cool, fantastic. Thanks again, Jordan.
Appreciate it, Joe. Thanks.